Hey everybody, David here, and welcome to the ASOG podcast. In this episode, we pick back up where we left off in our conversation on diagnostic testing fees with Bill Nalu, Dutch Silverstein, and Matt Skundrich. But before we get to the fireworks, and yeah, there were fireworks, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast on your favorite podcast listening app. If you're listening on YouTube, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an upload. And now, part 2 of our discussion, where we start off with Matt Skundrich objecting to what Bill Nalu just said. Here we go.
You don't have to have that conversation because they don't think they're ever going to pay for it. But in reality, they're paying for it. I mean, it's no different than me going, oh, yeah, you know, the dealer's a ripoff, or the dealer's $100 an hour. Don't worry, you're never going to pay that here. You're only going to pay $25. However, what I'm not telling you is that I'm just going to charge you 4 times the normal labor amount to make the same thing as the dealer down the road. What's the difference? I mean, you're not having that conversation because you've swept it so far under the rug. There is no conversation to have.
So this is the most important thing that we could be talking about right now. So Matt, why should it be not swept under the rug? It's a completely meaningless conversation.
And let me tell you why it shouldn't be. Because there comes a point, and I don't care how good your shop is, there comes a point where you get a car that you're going, I'm not real sure, I'm not 100% on this, let me call somebody, or let me tell you about this mobile guy down the street who's mobile. He can come to you. He's got an OEM tool I don't have that might be able to diagnose this car, right? Every shop has a car you can't fix. I'm mobile. Yes. There's cars I don't fix every day. Here's the problem now that you have now instilled in this customer. I should never pay for diagnostics. So now that jerk customer calls me and says, hey, Bill just recommended me to you. And I say, yep, I can come look at your car. It's going to be $200 an hour for me to come diagnose your car. All of a sudden, I have this irate, pissed off customer because they have never once paid for a diag because you sweep it under the rug and refuse to have that conversation. But I'm not going to give any money on the part, so I have to charge for diag. And now I waste 25 minutes of my life having this conversation about, no, Bill probably charges you. He just sweeps it under the rug, and you don't understand how this works. Da-da-da-da-da. And I just blow everything out under the water, and I'm annoyed and pissed off. And I just tell the lady, look, I'm not your person. Have a great day. And I walk away from the job because I've wasted so much time on the phone trying to explain why I'm charging $200 that it doesn't even justify now going to the job unless I'm going to charge $300 because I've just wasted an hour because somebody had to sweep this under the rug all the time.
I think the person calling in, though, and asking, hey, this part got diagnosed at the dealership. Will you put this in for me? I mean, I'm going to stop and go, well, why are you not doing it with the dealer? Well, they're too expensive. Yeah. Well, hold on now. Why do you think I'm going to be cheaper than the dealership? And I have this conversation with the customers all the time. And here's what I explain to them. That dealership was charging you to slap in part A, and that's it. We look at the entire system. We look at the fact that the car has 150,000 miles, and there's probably more to that repair than what the dealership is quoting you. So it is very likely that you're going to come in here. I'm going to look at that system and say, they should have also quoted you part B and C and D, because that's going to ensure that part A actually functions properly for as long as I'm warranted, which is 3 times what the dealership is going to warranty that repair for. Yeah, so I don't know that I'm necessarily.
But we're changing the conversation now. Now we're talking about repairs. Well, yeah. I'm strictly talking about diagnosis. To sweep it under the rug and say, "Oh, well, I threw it in with the repair." Well, no, you didn't throw it in with repair. You added an hour of labor to make up for the hour you took off. You just made it.
Let me ask you this, Bill. Are you telling the customer, hey, in the process of doing this repair, we have to confirm, because I own this repair, we have to confirm that the part is actually faulty. Yeah. So part of this repair is confirming that the diagnosis was correct.
This is the funny thing about it. And the reason I can't answer it directly is because it is such a, and I say this respectfully, it is such a silly exercise to to think that the 1% of those customers who are going to say, well, yeah, but we've got a Well, first of all, most customers aren't going to be dealing with it. This is not a conversation that you're going to have with 99.9% of the customers.
I have this conversation 30 times a week.
I understand it, but the reason that you might be having that is because the people that are actually presenting it the way they are breaking down diagnostics and labor, and the ticket itself isn't job costed. So what
because in our state we can't have a job costed ticket. It must be every item must be listed. Every part must be listed. It must be listed if it's new. You must have your part number on it. Yeah. That's part of our Florida vehicle repair laws.
Yeah. We have the same thing here in Michigan. What's different about it is this is a conversation that it's such a simple thing to get past, and yet we're spending, and it's okay, by the way. It's okay that we're spending this kind of time on it, but I'm here to tell you that this is a conversation that doesn't need to be as complicated as it is. When the job itself, so one of the things that you run into when it gets tricky is customer brings in the vehicle, they say they've got a brake squeak coming in, right? So we charge them the hour for the diag, for example, right? So we got the wheels pulled off the car. We happen to find that there's a coolant leak. It needs a water pump. Now we find, let's say the squeaking is something, they've got 30% left on the brake pads. They still have some time. They can't afford to spend the $450 on the brakes any more than they can spend the $500 on the water pump. There's a $950 difference. They've got to choose one or the other. So now the question is, can I apply the hour labor that you guys spent looking at my brakes and apply it toward this water pump? Is that a question that you're asking essentially? Was that a fair way to describe that?
No, not
then
at
how
all.
would you describe it? How would you describe it?
Here's what I'm saying. Customer comes in for a diagnosis. I don't care what it is, right? On that ticket, there should be a line item that says diagnostics, inspection, blah, 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 1 hour, $200. Yeah. I'm just saying $200 labor rate because it seems to be the going rate recently. If, for whatever reason, I don't care if that customer comes in for a water pump and you end up selling brakes. If that item disappears and it's no longer on the ticket, here's what happens. At some point, I get the phone call and the customer says, look, I just don't understand why you're charging for diagnostics. Here's what they've got ingrained in their head. I've read over every bill I've had from Bill for the last 30 years. Never once has there been a diagnostics, an inspection, or a testing fee because it's rolled into the repair. Now I have to sit here and explain to them for 20 minutes about what diagnostics is, how he rolls it into the repair. That shouldn't have to happen. Like, why are we so scared to put a line item on a ticket that says diagnostics and inspection? Is that so friggin' dangerous? Yeah, I mean, I don't understand. If your business is that great and you're that great of a salesperson, boom, bang, done. Diagnostics and testing. Diagnostics, testing, and inspection. Because done. It should be on every ticket.
Yeah, Matt, because the problem is it's a wedge conversation at the counter, and I don't want to have that conversation. I don't need to have that conversation. It's a meaningless conversation over the phone.
I understand you're saying it's meaningless, but for the rest of the industry, it's
not meaningless.
Yeah.
And you don't have to have it on the counter. You can just job cost it in there, and then when the customer gets the bill, then you can have that conversation. It's done. They agreed to the price. Whether you swept it under the run, bait and switched, or whatever you want to call it, it's still there.
So the difference, so like we have situations where, the repair and the testing would be on top of each other. And, I've got to take I've got to take the intake manifold off, and I've got to take all this stuff off. And so for me to get to that component, for me to test it properly, is 9/10 of the labor time to replace it. So in those instances, I roll the repair, quote unquote, into the diagnostic testing. But I make it very clear on the ticket. I go, hey, to confirm that this part has failed. And while we're in there, if that part is confirmed to be bad, I'm going to replace it. And to do all that, it is X amount of dollars. But at the R&R time, you add a little bit of time in there. But I explain to them, I make it very clear that we're going to go in there to do testing, not to slap a part in. And if we've confirmed that that part has failed, we'll go ahead and put it in there. So here is the testing time and replacement of the part all in one quote unquote job. So we were confirming the failure of part, but so if you look at my ticket, it's not necessarily listed out separately. Does that make sense, Matt?
It makes sense, and I get it. But here's my scenario. I had a car yesterday or the day before. It was a 2018 Ram ProMaster. Hazards lights randomly blink. Turn the key on or off. The hazards lights just start going. Shop calls me out, says, "Hey man, we looked at it. We tested the hazard switch. It was bad. Thought that would fix it. It didn't fix it. Can you come look at it?" I said, "Sure, no problem. Just know that there's a $150 diagnostic fee for my first hour on this electrical problem. After the hour, it's another $150. And the guy said, "Okay." I showed up. I was there approximately 40 minutes, and I said, "Hey, look, it's going to need a BCM." I said, "Go ahead and tell your customer that the real issue is the BCM. It thinks the switch is active all the time. Here's the printout showing the screen showing it active." I said, "It's going to need a BCM. That's going to have to be programmed. It's another $200. Well, they went and got the BCM while I was still there because the dealer's only across the street. Literally, shop owner looked at me and says, "Hey, man, you think you could roll your diagnostic fee into that programming fee since you're already here?" No, I can't. Well, why can't I? Well, that YTech software is stupid amount of money a year, and the only way I'm going to make that money back up is to eventually pay for my diagnostic time of using that equipment and then charging you a programming fee. I hate to say it, but
shop owners asking you that?
Oh yeah,
because that doesn't make any sense.
Because they don't know.
We get asked that all the time. We get asked that, and we tell them, "Look, it's two separate functions. For me to pull out my lab scope, hook up all the doodads onto the car, run this test, show you this whatever pressure transducer wave pattern, and hey, look at this, and we're going to be able to show you that it's out of time, and we put a little cursors on there and little arrows, this, that, and the other. We produce this work." Is not the same thing as slapping in spark plugs. It's two different things.
But here's the thing,
why
right?
would the shop owner not understand that?
Because
they haven't been properly trained. They don't understand.
They don't understand that sweeping your diagnostic fee under the rug, rolling it in with labor is hurting the industry as a whole, and they have mentally trained themselves to never charge for diagnostics. Now they can't understand why a mobile guy is. It is absolutely insane the amount of arguments I have with shop owners on this. Matter of fact, I now am up front and say, if you waste my time in arguing about this, one, I'll never come back, and two, you're going to pay me more the second time. Because I'm done dealing with this.
Yeah. Matt,
I can see Matt's frustration in this, but he exemplifies like a lot of shop owners out there that are done having this conversation on the phone, and they say, "No, $150, you don't pay me, get out."
Yeah. So Matt, to David's point, we have a guy. I don't know if you know. God, what's his name? Tool Hut. Sam Brooks. You probably ran into him at some point. You know Sam?
Yeah.
Great guy. So Sam, I've known Sam for at least 25 years. So Sam comes from the same school of hard knocks that you are. Okay. He and it's so funny because he said the last time he was here, he wouldn't walk into somebody's building. I'm like, why did you? He calls the guy up and he says, "I need you to come out in the parking lot." He goes, "Why not? Why don't you come in?" He goes, "No, you come out." Guy goes out in the parking lot. He says, "Now take a look at your building." He goes, "What?" He says, "Take a look at your front door. What's wrong with the front door? Why can't I walk in your building?" He goes, "I still can't see it." He says, "It says you this is a gun-free zone." He says, "I can't do business with you if you're a gun-free zone." And so what's funny about this is us putting up walls and telling somebody sort of where we're at right up front before we've developed a relationship beyond the price of something. So if you're willing to take some measure of advice, I'm begging you to just hear me out on this. If you get somebody who you've never met before, who doesn't think you're worth something at this point in time, rather than making a statement like, "This is what I charge and the second hour is going to be this much and that much," just feel them out, see how they run their business, because you just might be able to convert them to your way of thinking such that whether they put the line item in there for Diag or build it into the job cost or whatever the hell they do, at least they understand you've got to pay a technician his or her going rate. And that going rate, by all accounts right now, is about 80 to 100 grand. If they're not making that kind of money, all of this conversation is nonsense. It doesn't matter which way we take
the
it.
area of the
It's
country
all
that you're
relative,
in.
relative.
Yeah.
And so,
I mean, but here's the problem. And I'm telling you, if you come ride with me for a week, you'll be astonished.
Yeah.
They think because they're always rolling their fee into a repair that I should as a diagnostic guy. And I'm going, that's not how this works. Just because you don't doesn't mean I am.
I think the problem, though, is that these shop owners don't understand the value that they're bringing in doing any testing. Yeah. And some of these shops that you're showing up to don't actually provide any value.
Yeah.
To the diagnostic process. They're not actually doing any diagnosis. I hired a tech. He came from a chain here in Kansas City, and he wanted to diagnose vehicles. He was the only guy in the shop that wanted to diagnose vehicles because he found it fascinating. And he told me flat out, they don't charge for diagnostics. And it turns out they don't actually do any diagnostic. What they do is they think the part, they run the code, they see the part's throwing a code, they order the part, they put it in. Did it fix it? Yes. We're charging for diagnostics and we're charging for the repair. If it didn't fix it, they take the part out, they return it back to the parts store, they put the old one back in, and they tell them, oh, you got to take it to the dealer.
Yeah.
And that's how they run. And this is a very large organization here in Kansas City. They have several shops. They make a lot of money.
Yeah. And Dave, to your point, what Matt's saying here about this, when you have a technician that is maybe either undercapitalized for equipment because the boss isn't willing to buy the proper equipment that the technician needs, or the technician doesn't have the training or hasn't kept up on the training, you're left with Identifix is level one. And then level two is getting Matt in there to figure out what the hell's wrong with this car, so that I can maybe charge for this customer or just get this car out of my life. Because buried under
that shop shouldn't be advertising that they can do.
They shouldn't be in business
work at all.
There's no disagreement. They shouldn't be around. But we are where we are.
If they want to slap brake pads in and they want to do suspension work and that's all they want to do, then they need to advertise that that's what they do. Need to be upfront with the customer and say, I can't diagnose this vehicle. Or I can, but I got to call my guy in and it's going to be whatever his markup is. It's going to be $250 for us to start. He needs to be upfront with them. Don't bring the car to me with an electrical problem and the hazard lights when all I do is brakes and suspension. That doesn't make any sense. My biggest frustration, hold on. My biggest frustration in the consumer's mind, they see what they do and what we do as the same thing. You guys work on cars. It's all the same thing, isn't it? No, it is not. That's a hack shop. All they can do is brakes, which is some of the most basic skills that comes with working on cars. And what we do is completely different. Don't make it equal. And a lot of these shops advertise it as the same thing, even though it's not. And they don't tell the customer that, hey, we're not equipped and we don't have the expertise. We don't know what we're doing. We're hacks.
I have a shop that is nothing more than a brake, tire, and alignment specialty shop. And they'll do some other basic repairs, right? Like, hey, the guy's in for, he's got 100,000 miles and he's getting tires, and they know that the maintenance book says it needs spark plugs, right? So they'll upsell that. They're not diagnosing that it needs spark plugs, right? It's just like, hey, maintenance time, if you haven't had these done, since it's here, we'll go ahead and take care of it for you. They do it right, okay? They don't charge diagnostics. Now, if they get a car in for whatever reason, because this happens from time to time, and the customers are like, hey, you guys treated me right, my car's running weird, da-da-da, can you look at it? The guy tells them, no, I can call somebody in, let you know when we can get on his schedule. He charges us, we're going to charge you what he charges us, and then we're going to, and you can decide if you want the repair from there based on his diagnostics. And that's exactly how they do it. And I'll tell you, it's one of my favorite shops to go to because the guy never argues with me about my diagnostic price. He normally
gives me with the customer.
He
knows what value he brings to the customer.
Yes,
I think that's ends up being the crux of the issue here. He knows what value he brings. I know what I do, and I know I do it well. And then that's it. I don't try to go past that. I don't try to be all things to all people. And that's what ends up happening with a lot of these shops. They want the car in the door. He was telling me the other day, Bill, to your point, you were talking about they come in for a brake squeal and it turns out they have a coolant leak. My tech was telling me he was doing a timing cover on a Taurus, and I asked him, I'm like, how much time would it be at this other shop if they were doing this? He looked at me, he's like, they wouldn't do this at the other shop. I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, every Taurus needs this timing cover water pump combo thing, right? Every single one of them. I said, why wouldn't they do it? He goes, because they don't know what they're doing there. What they would do is they would charge the $450 for brakes, tell them, hey, you got a coolant leak, not tell them the full scope of the situation that, hey, this is a problem. You can't just ignore this coolant leak and just pay us the $450 for brakes. You need to decide which direction you're going to go, because this coolant leak will leave you stranded down the street. They don't say anything to the customer. They let the customer leave thinking the car's fine, that I just got this minor coolant leak, but I just paid the shop $450 to do brakes. That's disingenuous. It's wrong to let the customer leave thinking that they've got a good working vehicle, but they just wanted the money for the brakes because that's what they're capable of doing. They can't do anything else for that customer. They know it. So they're okay letting that customer walk out the door with a coolant leak. That's how a lot of shops operate. I mean, what do you do with that?
I had a lady years ago call me. She taught me something I'll never, ever forget. She calls me up. She says, I need a price on an engine. And I said, can I ask you, what's the reason for replacing the engine? She says, it's knocking. She says, it's a rod knock, and it's very obvious and all this other stuff. I said, would it interest you to know that your engine could knock for reasons altogether unrelated to something inside your engine? She goes, yeah, but I still want to, price on it. So we go round and round for about a minute and a half. And then she says to me, look, are you going to give me a price, or am I just going to hang up on you? So I said to her, you know what? You're absolutely right. I said, what price would you like? She says, well, what does it cost for an engine? I said, well, why don't you answer it? Why don't you tell me what you think an engine should cost? She says, I don't know, about $2,000. I said, well, you're in luck. I said, because today this honestly, God, this literally happened. I said, well, you're in luck. I said, because today we're running half off of all engines. She says, for my front wheel drive Buick? I said, yeah. She says, is this for like a brand new motor? I said, well, I was thinking remand, but since we've got this half off thing, I said, what the hell? Let's just get a GM crate motor for it. And then so she's quiet on the line, and I said, are you still there? She says, yeah. I said, what's going through your head right now? She says, you're messing with me, aren't you? I said, you're absolutely right. I said, I'm messing with you. I said, what do you think this search that you're on, what do you think is happening right now as you call the next 9 places? And she says, well, I'm looking for the cheapest guy in town. And so we start having this conversation. I said, when you take it somewhere, I said, think about the place that you're going to take this vehicle to. Ask yourself why it is that they have 5 used cars for sale up front. And where do you suppose they got those vehicles from? What's going to happen when you get the price that you think is the right price for you, and you take it over there and they pull this motor out of the car and all of a sudden the price just doubled? What do you think is going to happen there? And so again, she's thinking about all this. And so I'm building this report, and all of a sudden, again, I question why this thing's knocking, and I step on a landmine, and she says to me, how dare you? You'd never be telling this to a man, it's so sexist and all this other stuff. And she says, it's a rod knock. I said, well, how about this? And so we were talking about, I couldn't get her to understand it's going to be $120 back then to figure out what's going on with her vehicle. So now I said, we've already spent 10 or 15 minutes on the phone call. I said, why don't you drive the car over to me? She says, I don't think it's going to make it here. And so I said, if it breaks down, I will tow it at my cost, and I'll take care of this Diag for you. Don't worry about this Diag. I'm just curious whether, in fact, this thing is knocking or not. Because about 9 out of 10 customers like you are wrong about the diagnosis when you're calling over the phone. So she drives it over here, and sure as crap, this thing is knocking. It's a typical rod knock. So we get it in, and we find out the harmonic balancer separated the 2-piece harmonic balancer, and it sounds like a rod knock. And so whatever, $250, $300 later, her engine, air quotes, was replaced. And so she's crying there in my waiting room. And I look and I'm going, so what's happening right now? And she says, what would have happened had I not listened to you, had I not spent enough time and answered the questions you were asking me?
Sold her an engine.
And so she's thanking me. And what I said to her was, I said, don't you dare thank me. I said, I'm the one that's thanking you for this. I said, because you have restored my faith in the process. And that is that I will sooner have somebody jump off that bridge and drown, and I can't save you. I didn't bring you into this world, and I can't save you from taking your own life, is automotively speaking. You jumped. Once you hang up, I can't save you anymore. And so if there's anything that I get out of a conversation like this, is this: we have our own sense of style, we have our own sense of thing. If you're doing honest, dependable work, as we are, and I would bet my life on it that the folks that are going to hear this conversation are by and large 99.9% of them are spending their time saying, I want to provide good service for good money. How do I do that? It doesn't happen without learning to court. There's a courtship there. Matt, I promise you, there's a courtship problem you have with some of this database that you have. You can bring these people to understand why you are worth what you are worth. An ex-boss of mine, I've said this before on Carm's podcast, and I say this all the time. He said to me, Bill, he said, either you train that customer to do business the way you know you need to do business to be able to serve them, or they train you. When you train them, it's a win-win proposition. When they train you, it's a lose-lose proposition.
Okay, can I interject here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Most shop owners I know, back in the day when there were yellow pages, so I'm kind of dating myself.
Yeah, there you go. I'm there with you.
Yeah, all right.
What is a yellow page?
That's it. I knew that was coming up. Skundrich is going to be right on the net. Yeah, Skundrich is going to be on the net going, what the hell is yellow pages?
You have to subscribe to the podcast again.
Right? And Roman's going to go like, I think I read about that once, but I'm not quite sure. I don't remember.
I have nothing against yellow pages. Go
okay.
ahead.
It has nothing to do with anybody peeing on a white pages.
That's right. That's right. So when you looked and there were advertisements for, shops that were in there, they always had the same thing, which was honest, right? Every shop was honest. Every shop was friendly. Every shop had the words integrity, et cetera, in it. Okay. So you looked at and you looked and saw that the overwhelming majority of shops that were advertising had those words in it. Yet if as a professional you went over to the physician's page and you saw the advertisements, you never saw that. Well, why was that questioned? In other words, if you have two people that are in a similar business in that they are fixing things, whether they're fixing humans or they're fixing machines, why is it that one has to think it's necessary to emphasize their honesty, their integrity, their friendliness, and the other doesn't? Because, in my estimation, one was expected and the other was expected to do wrong. So what happens is, instead of words now that were honest, etc., we use the phrase transparent. We are transparent in our business model.
You're so woke right now.
Right? So when you have words that are transparent, what you regard as a wedge is what you said, Bill, in a conversation, I regard as an asset. Because I'm not afraid to qualify a potential customer. Now remember, there's consumer, customer, and client. That's how I categorize them. I'm not afraid to qualify that other individual on the end of the phone to see if we're going to be a good fit. Because my ideal client, who starts out as a consumer and then moves to a customer and ultimately a client, is one who meets my avatar, and that is of valuing the service that I provide. And in order to do that, I have to be absolutely transparent. Yes, there is a fee for testing. Yes, that fee for testing is not applied to the repair. And I don't want to use any subterfuge. It's a bad word, forgive me. I don't want to subordinate that diagnosis into a repair, because once I do that, I have established an expectation. And I keep on coming back to this for a reason. And the expectation is I went to Bill Nalu's shop and it was a wonderful experience. It was wonderful. And he's earned my trust and I'm never going to go anywhere else. And I have to move away from my job. My job's taking me to a different city. Okay. When they go to my facility, they're going to have to pay for that diagnostic process, that testing for root cause analysis. They won't understand why. And it raises a question, and it works for you because the way you roll it in, so the amount of money at the end of the day, the net for that repair is equivalent to mine. But for me, I'm telling them up front because I need my education for them to happen at the time on the phone when I could better spend it working on cars. In other words, I want to get the proper customer in. This is why you don't see Rolexes advertised in the penny saver, or actually not the penny saver, true Rolexes. You see them or at Walmart. Now, I know you could probably find one online, but you walk into Walmart, you don't see Rolexes in the jewelry counter because that's, or Piaget or Patek Philippe, because that's not their customer. I don't want to play psychological games and figure out what their emotional IQ is. I don't care. You're coming to me as a professional. What I want to do is tell you as a professional, this is the steps that we're going to follow. Now, are there exceptions? Yes, and David touched on them, and you did a little bit too. And that is that if somebody comes in and says, I have a noise when I depress the brakes when I'm going to stop, I'm going to tell them we're going to have a brake inspection, and the fee for that brake inspection is this. And during the course of that inspection, we are going to do the following. And I read them off what it is that we do. If at the time that we do the brake inspection, we determine that you need brakes, we're going to call you. If you get back to me within 15 minutes and you authorize the brakes if they needed to be repaired, or replace, then because it's not ethical for me to charge you twice for the same work, I am going to take that brake inspection and I'm going to apply it towards that repair. Why? Because I had to take the wheels off anyway. I mean, that's half the job. I have to take the wheels off. I can't do the brake inspection where I measure out the thickness of the rotors, look for run out, measure out pads, check their condition, etc., without taking the wheels off. Okay, if more than 15 minutes passes, and you haven't called me back, texted me, or alerted to me, and I need to take that vehicle and reassemble it and move it outside because I am at my base, a production-based business, then when you call me 3 hours later and say, okay, go ahead, do the brakes, you are going to pay me for that brake inspection. Do you understand? Does that make sense to you? And if they say yes, great, not a problem. If they say no, I don't think I have to pay for it, then I'm not the right person for you. Because I've been a customer of Duke Energy for the last 30-something years. And at no time has Duke Energy ever said to me, listen, sir, you've paid your bill like clockwork every single month. You're never late. And your check's always clear. So we're going to give you 3 days worth of electricity free of charge. The cable company winds up going out and makes offers to new clients that me as a loyal 20-something year cable customer can't get. You have to threaten to hang up. In other words, I'm going to end my service with you, and then you have to speak to the retention department, and then you have to go 40 minutes to get something that you have earned. That's the difference. You have to acknowledge, I mean, on a purely logical basis, that if you're telling somebody you're not charging them for that service, what you're doing is you are setting an expectation for that person. You are educating them that one of the most difficult aspects of our business, the one that takes the most equipment, the most knowledge and skill, is worth little to nothing on its own. Its value is only when it is put in with the repair. And if you said to them, respectfully always, because you know how I feel about you. Respectfully, if you said to him, here's the deal. Yes, we are going to charge you for that diagnosis. And the way what we're going to do that is we're going to add that time, okay, or that testing fee, excuse me, not time. We're going to take that testing fee and we're going to add it to your repair order, and you're going to ultimately wind up paying me for it. That's transparency. Telling them that you're not, or having a line item that shows zero, just told them that that is worth zero. That's why when you give a discount to somebody like I do for the Marine Corps, and there's a couple of worthy organizations that I help out, I always make sure that they see that discount is on the repair order, because I want them to see what it is and appreciate the value in the savings that they receive. Oh, I saved 25, 50, 100, $600 million, whatever it is. Because if it's a Euro car, it's going to be an $800,000 repair, especially if it's a Volkswagen, right? So, I mean, that's the way that you have to look at it, in my view. Okay, I fixate on transparency as you do, except I don't think that I should have to, as their advocate. I'm not trying to overcome an objection. As someone who respects their autonomy as an individual, they deserve to know all of the facts surrounding their property.
I think the only difference here is that, Dutch, you're having that conversation on the phone. Bill seems to be having that conversation in person. But what do we tell the shop owner that, for example, the one who threw that post up and said, we don't charge for diagnostic time? And I'm not sure if it was the wife or the husband had put the post up, but they had taken their Facebook ad and they were showing that they were disinfecting the vehicle before they serviced it. And they have plastic on the steering wheel, plastic on the seat. They've got the floor mat. They're spraying it down with something on the door handles and stuff to make sure the vehicle is fully desanitized before they start servicing on service on it. That was the advertising, and buried in there was ask about free diagnostics. And so I said, what do you mean, what's free diagnostics? And they said, well, if you have the repair done with us, we waive the fee. And whatever that happens to be, $100, $150.
But that's what Bill said.
They waive the fee. No. Well, Bill, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like not that he waives the fee, he rolls the fee into the repair as a confirmation of somebody else's diagnosis because they've already essentially paid for the diag.
Yeah.
Is that right, Bill?
Gentlemen, how much is it going to cost me and when is it going to be ready? That's 90% of our work. Once you've established a name for yourself and 90% of the time, how much is it going to be? And, there's one other thing that I want to, as if this is not already a interesting, delicious, complicated subject matter, there's another part of this is. So I live in Metro Detroit, a very, very diverse, culturally diverse community. Is it fair to say, Matt, is your place culturally diverse? You get the shop owners? Okay. Dutch, is that yours area too?
No, we're homogeneous as hell here. Really? I mean, everybody freaking looks like me. Of course. Yeah, we're in Charlotte, North Carolina. We have people from all over the country.
Yeah. So I'm Middle Eastern. I'm going to pick on Middle Eastern people, but there's folks that are Indian and there's folks. So especially for immigrants like I am, they come in and they're all about the discount. Now, I could take the road that I sometimes take and say that we're above that. That if I can't sell you on value, then clearly I haven't done a good enough job of selling you on why you should hire us and be our customer going forward. Having said that, they go back to the courtship part of that. The part that I find native-born Americans, it's almost like it's no longer a skill set because they don't see what is actually happening here. When you don't negotiate with somebody, so I had an Indian gentleman come in And we were sort of talking about this, and I said, "How did you come to us?" He says, "I just can't seem to find a place that sort of wants to work with me." And so what he was meaning by that is most places aren't willing to have a conversation with him about the fact that he has to have this 10. He wants to barter. And so we got to sit down and talk to him. I said, I'm an immigrant too. I said, in America, the price is the price. And I said, by and large, we work that way too. I said, but I understand where you're coming from. You feel like you're not worthy of being bartered with. And he practically jumps out of his seat. He goes, exactly. He said, I'm insulted by the fact that they think that I don't have enough money. I'm driving a Mercedes. I'm a doctor, whatever. I said, but here's the problem with it. I said, you're talking past each other, culturally speaking. So taking the customer out of the equation and speaking to my fellow shop owners is, if you're somebody who thinks that you're not going to give this guy $20 off because you don't want to train him to expect this, what's wrong with saying to the guy, look, you're a first-time customer here. Will $20 be enough for us to be able to do this, $1,500 worth of work? Will that make you happy? That's fine. I will do that. I really appreciate it. Can we make a deal, please? That if we do this time, that the next time around, we won't have this conversation again, because I really want you to respect the fact that we have a pricing structure and this is how we do it. And the price is the price. We don't play games with people and all this other stuff. The price is the price. So, and if we do that, then what we find is that maybe 25% of that database is this now taught, this is no longer a person that is going to beat you up over some of this stuff. And the beauty of it is they are highly, highly, highly loyal, and they refer more customers than any other subset of the population, because once they find somebody that understands them culturally, then they send all kinds of people. And so the customers that I have here that are of immigrant background understand, even though they know I'm Middle Eastern, they know I don't play that game. And they know there's around other shops, this is all that goes all day long. Oh, how much? And how come with this and all that? And because we've been able to do that, we have a customer base that refers more, probably 3 or 4 times a native-born population. So I don't know if that surprises you to hear that, but again, it's about training the customer, speaking their language, pun intended, speaking their specific cultural language, and finding out what is it that keeps you from bringing this vehicle in for me today, so that I know I can help you. The only way I can't help you is if you're expecting me to do everything for nothing. If you want me to do something for nothing and you're going to contribute to my ARO, you're my customer. But if you're somebody who doesn't respect my time, doesn't respect the fact that we have professionals that need to be paid above any skilled tradespeople in industry, then you don't get it. And if it takes me, if I've got somebody, and I've had people, if I can say, you can edit this out, Repair Pal is by far the most egregious at this. They'll send me people that they'll submit to an inspection, and they're about to have a hissy fit behind the counter. And so I give them their keys and I say, don't worry about it. You don't owe me anything. And they go away, and there's no 1-star rating, and I never see them again, and I never want to see them again. And I pay my technician, and then I move on to the other 99 who will.
Yeah.
That's it.
I have somebody who gets overly upset at the counter, and I've had that happen. They approve it up front. They didn't like what we told them, that, hey, it's going to need, timing chains. This is going to be $5,500 to do or whatever. They start to get angry. Maybe the warranty company declined the work or whatever. And they said,
else,
hey,
I knew it. That code told me that it was timing chains. I knew it all along. I told you when I called you.
Exactly. And it doesn't matter that we showed them, hey, here's a cam crank correlation on the lab scope, this, that, and the other. And they start to get upset. I said, you know what? Don't worry about it. We'll eat it this time. Here's your keys. Have a nice day. Get out.
Yep. Uncheck marketing.
Uncheck marketing, and that's exactly right.
But here's my question, and Bill did a nice story, and it was a great story on how to make a sale. But here's my question: going back to the podcast thing or the post from 5 minutes ago, what is the difference between saying, "Oh, I'm going to waive your diagnostic fee," and sweeping it under the rug in the repair? Nothing. Essentially, you have no idea if that customer really meant, hey, I'm waiving it, never charging the person, or if they meant, oh, it looks like it's waived with air quotes, but it's really not. And that's the long and the short of this conversation. There's 1,000 ways you can spin it, but at the end of the day, if you're never putting a line item on the ticket, you're essentially waiving the diagnostic fee in that customer's mind.
Well, no, you are the diagnostic findings are still there. That line item, that job is still there. It's just, and by the way, just so we're clear here, I'm not waiving level 2 or level 3 diagnostics. There's no way in hell that's happening. If I've got 7 or 8 hours of electrical diagnostics on a $12,000 job on a freight liner, and it's a fleet company, there's no way in hell. I don't waive a dime of that. I'm talking about the customer that's coming in that just wants to be sold on our why. And if you've got to give them the diagnostics for the first time, if they're asking you that or whatever the situation is, if you feel that you have it within you to be able to say, how do we get past this rub here? If I've got to do that in order to drive our industry to be more professional so that we can pay our technicians so that they're not being bled out of our industry, I don't lose 1 minute of sleep over what it might look like if that customer moves to Houston. And I've had that happen where a customer moved to Houston. She called me and she said, I miss you guys to death. I got to call you to find out if what I'm hearing is legit from this Firestone or from this whatever. And so if that ruins that customer to the industry, then I invite the industry to maybe look at another way. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying there is another way.
So
it's not. They don't have to hang up.
But here's my problem, right? So this is what you're now saying in a nutshell, and I'm going to be blunt and kind of a dick, right?
That's fine. I love that.
Because I just am that type person, and everybody hates me, and I don't really give a shit.
So that's why we had John, Matt.
Yep. But here's the problem, right? So your first hour of diagnostics should be pull the car in, a visual inspection, check for TSBs, check for module updates that pertain to maybe to that item, right? Blah, 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 blah. You're now saying, hey, look, if I find that in the first hour, don't worry about paying that. My tech's time was not worth that $120 an hour or $200 an hour my shop rate was. I can go ahead and waive that. We don't care that the guy looked up TSBs and stuff. It's such a bad mindset.
Okay, so but Matt, why do you say that? Show me at the bottom of the invoice. If the bottom of the invoice says $952.82, how can you say that without knowing what the breakdown is of the parts and labor involved in that?
Because I can read every ticket. And in my state, it should say on that ticket what it was. So that's the problem I have with this. There is no difference in that guy posting, oh, I waive all diagnostic fees. Oh, I just roll it into the repair. You said the same thing.
And you think the customer cares about that? You think the customer is going to hire you the second or third or 15th time on the basis whether you charge for diagnostics or not?
But this is the problem is you're now training the customer to go, well, I should never pay for diagnostics. Whether you want to admit that or not, that is what you've trained that customer to do.
Okay, Matt. When the customer... let me say this one thing, David. This is really important. Matt, when the customer leaves my shop, that's the last time they're going to look at that. Either they're getting an emailed invoice that they're never going to refer to, or they've got a paper copy that they're never going to refer to. Do you know why? Because I tell them, by the way, you never, ever, ever need to bring that invoice in for service. That's why we have computers. We have a database.
I understand.
Guess what
Customers
happens? The invoice goes away.
Life changes. Things happen. My area, people move here like clockwork because it's in south of Orlando. So I get people who move here from New York, Michigan, because the Democratic state up there has just locked it down so much. Everybody wants to move here.
I just saw another chainsaw. Chainsaw.
So now I have these customers coming down and going, they've never looked at your receipt, but I'm telling you they do. Because here's what happens. They go over to their glove box, here's the service that's been done on my car, and they hand it to the next shop. And that's when they realize, wait a minute, this shop's telling me he's charging for Diag. Bill never did. This shop must be a ripoff because I shouldn't pay for Diag. Bill always gave it away. End case. You're done. That's when they notice.
Or
if they're your customer for life, that's fine. Yeah. But when they move, you screw over the next shop.
Well, or better yet, the other shop says, oh, they ripped you off because they charged you, I don't know, $250, $300 in labor for the water pump instead of whatever. and therein lies the whole crux of this thing is, as an industry, we're independent repair facilities. It's no different than, I'll just tell you another a quick thing here. A customer, a neighbor of mine, had 2 pizza stores. So we sat there one day. They were on the verge of bankruptcy. Tom is telling me about this, and I said to him, I said, Tom, what's going on right now? And he says, well, it's this Little Caesars hot and ready pizzas. They're killing me. They're selling these things for $5, and that's below my cost. I don't know how I can compete with them. And so I said to him, I said, Tom, what if the price of that pizza, what if they raised their price to $6? Do you still think they'd be kicking your ass? He goes, yeah, he did. I said, what about $7? And then we get to his cost. I think it was $7.50. And, he's telling me about how he's got these great ingredients and everything's gourmet and it's all handmade and all this other stuff. And so I said, let's go for broke. What if they charge $10 for that hot and ready pizza? You still think they'd be selling 1 million pizzas to yours? And he had to admit, yes. I said, why do you suppose that's the case? He said, because a customer's walking in and they want something that is hot and ready. All that mom, that soccer mom, wants is to walk in and 30 seconds later have a 2-liter bottle of pop and 2 pizzas and she's going to have bliss for the next 45 minutes driving home from soccer practice. And what we don't understand sometimes is that we say we're diagnosticians and we repair cars and we're that, but the other 99% of that is we're psychologists and psychiatrists and social workers, and we have the most complicated business model. We do the most complicated work on man's most complicated consumer product, and then we have the most complicated machine that God has ever created working on this.
Have you ever walked into a doctor's office and gotten away with not paying them for looking at you?
No, but I've walked into a lawyer's office and had the consultation be free for the first time.
The guy gives you some advice and you walk out the door. Yeah.
So
I think the difference though here,
but you just said that we're working on complicated machines like a doctor. Why can a doctor always charge and I can't?
Well,
nobody likes doctors though.
So how many doctors?
And their machine hasn't changed since God made them.
Yeah. So I have crappy health insurance because I'm a self-employed person. I suspect you guys aren't much better than me in that regard.
What's health insurance?
Knock on wood. I haven't had a physical in over 10 years. I probably need to do that. But to the extent that if there was a doctor that says, look, if you're a small business owner and you can't take the cost of medicine the way it is. We want to invite you in for a free consultation. If you're a dentist, for example, we want to invite you in for a free consultation. You think that guy is going to be? Oh, and by the way, actually, I can't answer your question. When you say doctor, are you also including LASIK doctors, LASIK surgeons? Yeah. To which you have to say yes. And so when I got my LASIK 15 years ago, guess what the consultation cost me?
Nothing.
Guess what the doctor who I had to drive to Canada for charges? He charges $3,000, and he's got an Aston Martin and an AMG sitting in the front parking lot, and he's got about, I swear to God, Matt, as God is my witness, there had to be probably 100 people working in this office, and they had people coming and going. It looked like Grand Central Station in there. Now, I don't want to run Grand Central Station, but he was wildly successful on bringing that customer in on the basis that free consultation is. And I'm not even arguing.
But your
that we should do
LASIK falls
diagnostics
apart. Your LASIK falls apart. Here's why. That's an
Why?
optional elective surgery. That's like saying, hey, I got a 4x4 truck and I need to go in the mud more. Hey, any chance your shop's going to do a lift kit? You're going to spend some time looking into it for free, maybe get the guy to drive his truck by to look at it to go, I really don't want to get involved in this lift kit. Now, if that same shop owner calls you and says, hey, man, my truck's not running real good, no doctor's going to come look at you and run tests and then not hand you a bill. End of story. It's
hold
not
on,
an
hold on, hold on.
optional
Time
treatment.
out. There are a bunch of doctors, a bunch of practices that have elected to to stop taking insurance. They just take cash or whatever, credit card.
Subscription
and they're
based.
very or they're very upfront about their pricing. They say, yeah, come on in, whatever. We're going to have a conversation for free, and if we decide that we need to do A, B, and C, these are the charges. Everything's very transparent, and you can decide to pay me or not. LASIK is one of the most deregulated medical procedures in this country, which is why the prices keeps dropping, as there's so many people getting into it to compete against each other. But
does that sound familiar? Sound like another industry?
Well, hold on. Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. Matt is frustrated with the shop owner that is giving away something that either they can't quantify the value in, so to the customer specifically, they can't tell the customer, this is what we're doing and this is why there's value, and therefore they're giving it away for free, which is very likely what that shop that posted that ad was doing.
Yes.
They're a brand new shop. They don't see the value in what they're doing themselves, and therefore they don't have the confidence to sell it to their customer. So they're worried that they're going to get
If you have to
pushback,
sweep it under the rug, you can't sell it to your customer.
Hold on. Time out. Because I don't think necessarily that Bill is sweeping it under the rug.
Yeah.
I don't think because he is charging it. The price is what the price is. I bet you there's a line item somewhere in there that says verified diagnosis or tested this component.
Absolutely.
Or ran this.
Of course.
So it's in it's on the invoice. So
that's not the way he said it in this podcast.
I know, but what he's saying, the shop owner that Bill's talking to, the shop owner that Bill's talking to is a shop owner that is cut and dry, gets on the phone. It's $150 for me to even open the hood, and you don't like it, go pound sand. And it's almost elitism. It's almost, hey, I'm not even going to be bothered to talk to you unless you're willing to pay me lots of money. So I want to be very upfront with you. And all he's saying is, let's take a step back. Let's try to meet the customer where they're at. Let's have a conversation. Let's try to build a relationship. You're not building a relationship if you're standoffish on the phone, if you're telling them take it or leave it. That's not how you start a relationship.
That's a false dichotomy, David, and you know it.
No. I'm not
it's
saying it's an either or.
It's a false dichotomy because
it's an either or.
You're quoting the extreme. You're absolutely quoting the extreme, and that's not intellectually honest. And
hold on now. I'm not saying it's an either or, so it's not a false dichotomy. I'm not saying you can be one way or the other. I agree with him in that sense. I agree that you need to have a conversation on the phone. You need to be now where I will be willing to have that a little bit of that conversation on the phone and tell them this is what this process looks like. I want to be transparent. I want to be upfront. This is what we're doing. Is that worth it to you? Yes or no? If it's not, I understand. Just don't bring it in. He's willing to have that conversation in the lobby, in his lobby, but he's having that conversation where Matt's frustration is in the shop owner that doesn't see any value in what they're doing. They don't see any value in doing any kind of diagnostic testing. They may not even be doing any actual diagnostic testing. They're just, because they don't see any value in it, they can't quantify it to the customer, and so they're just giving it away.
But that's just it. We have trained the customer to expect somebody to sweep it under the rug, to make it go away, to make it not seem like it's worth a value, all because you guys don't want to make it a line item and have that conversation because you're too scared to lose the customer up front. If it wasn't that big of a deal, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The long and short of this is either you're too scared to have that conversation because you can't convert that sale, or B, you're going to get them into your shop, smooze them with free stuff, and then just sweep it under the rug. Either way, you did exactly what that other customer did, or the other shop did.
But Matt, when you say smoozing them means we have a date. I get to go out with somebody tonight. The other option is they hang up because we were so positioned to say it's going to be my way or the highway. When you meet a customer that says it's going to be my way or the highway, either we make either we meet them with the same level of energy, or as Bruce Lee would once explained it, it's why not take their energy and redirect it in the way that you can help them, because in the end, all of us on this call are about helping people. I mean, I would bet my life on it. Every one of you is about service, about helping, and our industry by and large is about service to your fellow man and building a sustainable business model. It doesn't happen when we make demands on the customer. Instead of saying to them is,
but we shouldn't have to make demands. It should be an industry standard. Hey, your car's broke.
What the hell does should mean? Since when does should mean anything? Kids shouldn't starve in Africa. We shouldn't have drunk drivers out there. Since when should anything be shoulds out there? Unfortunately, it's the world we live in.
I'll give you a scenario that I ran into. I had this lady call me up, and she said, "Hey, my car's running extremely rough. I don't know what's wrong with it." You could hear her; she was breaking down on the phone. She was panicking.
Yeah.
She didn't know what was wrong with her car. She didn't know how to emotionally handle it, and so I can't tell her on the phone, "Hey, this is going to be $150 diagnostic fee for me to even touch your car because that's the industry standard. I'm sorry." No, I said, "Hold on, okay, just bring it down. I'm just going to take a quick look at it."
Right, so let's pick an extreme case to make your point.
Well, I'm just saying, though, that's
like
what
crazy.
Bill is saying. No, that's what Bill is saying, though. That's what I'm trying to explain to you. That's what Bill is saying. Is let's take this lady. I opened the hood up. She had lien codes. I ran with the baby scanner. She had a bunch of lien codes. I opened up the hood, and at Jiffy Lube, when they put the air filter in, they had dislodged the intake hose off of the intake manifold. All I did was slip it back on, put the clamp back in properly, and then the car just smoothed out and said, "It's running fine now, cleared the codes. If there's another problem, bring it back in. We'll be happy." Did it out in the parking lot. She has been a loyal customer, sending me lots of referrals as she shows up here. So and what I'm saying, though, is what he's saying is, if you take that hard response and say, "Look, I'm not going to even look at your car unless you're telling me on the phone that you're willing to pay me X amount of dollars," she would have been jumping from phone call to phone call to phone call, trying to find somebody willing to help her without throwing a bunch of fees at her over the phone. But
that's
all
an
he's saying
extreme
is,
case.
It's a case-by-case basis. That's my point. I think
there's a nuance to it.
I don't want to speak for him, but
there's a nuance to this.
Yes, in my mind, I'm listening to her on the phone, freaking out, and I'm like,
so
I'm
the
not
conversation
even price.
Wait, I'm so confused what we're having a discussion on. Either the discussion is, do you charge for diagnostics or not? Or
that's a false dichotomy.
Or is the conversation supposed to be, well, let's decide if we're going to charge or not based on a case-by-case scenario, based on the person, if it's a single mom, because we all have 200 single moms we help, and da-da-da-da-da. Because if that's a conversation, I agree with you. But overall, every customer is paying for a diagnostic fee at the end of the day, whether they want to or not.
Matt, let me answer it this way. So if I have a customer that says, either you tell me if you charge for diagnostics and you roll it into the repair, or I hang up on you, what do you think I say to them?
5-minute conversation.
No. What I say to him is, Matt, let me ask you a question. If I have to charge you for a diagnostic fee, that we don't roll into that here, is it my understanding that you're going to find somebody else? You're going to call somebody else? And if the answer is yes, then I'm going to say, Matt, can I offer you a couple of tips as you make your calls, as you call the 10 places around town to find out if they're going to do that? And we have a conversation about that. And if they don't come in, that's great. But at least I've educated them about what is actually the journey that they're actually on as a novice. I'm assuming they're a novice, because if they're an engineer and they already know more than I do, I'm probably not going to convert that call anyway, because Mr. Engineer is going to think he developed the ECM for that vehicle. Don't you know? He built that transmission himself at the factory. So it's again,
they just don't have the lift and they don't have the time. But I totally engineered that thing.
This is the problem, Matt. You're an 8th degree black belt as a technician, right? All I'm saying is, and in many cases, what you do is a little different than what we do. You're a business to business proposition. I wouldn't waive my diagnostics. There's no way in hell. But what I would do is if I had somebody who has potential, if I had a guy, let's say, just picking on somebody who's ethnic, right? If I got some guy who doesn't understand about diagnostics, who better to talk to him about the value of diagnostics than the person that he's hiring to do some of the diagnostics for him? Maybe you can get this guy to understand, and whatever the hell he does, he can do that. But the problem is you're so, and I love you to death, man. You're so stuck in the way you have to do it. You're not willing to listen to how somebody's saying, just do it my way one time. That's what the guy's telling you. Just do it for me one time. And so let's say I've got a guy who's going to take advantage of me. This guy, even though I can see him coming 10 miles away, this guy's going to come in, is going to waste a half hour of my time and maybe a half hour of my technician's time. So the worst I have into it is I've got a little bit of time invested in it. I hit the uncheck button because clearly this guy does not meet my avatar. Now, some Dutch and I and Dave and you for that, we see that guy coming. So he may not even ever make it over the wall to make it into our shop. But other shop owners have dead floor space that they need to fill. They need to learn this technology, this way of talking with customers, to be able to convert this conversation, to turn it around and get these people to walk into their shops, so that before they figure out who the right customer is, they've got to figure out who the wrong customers are. And so the only thing they can't afford is having no phones ringing at all at their business. So I'm one of those guys that says, I don't have a problem with the wrong customers coming in the door as long as you've got traffic, because you need traffic. Last time I checked, this damn pandemic did even more damage to car count than we already have a problem with. So,
well, that's because your state's all locked down still.
Well, it's like industry-wide, there's going to be less cars on the road. Hopefully, it'll be made up by more miles. So, is that going to be autonomous taxis? I don't know, but clearly we need less parking spaces, and we're going to need more cars that can go more miles. So we'll see where that ends up. But the fact of the matter is, we're still missing this idea that these left brain, highly skilled technicians who have all the respect in the world, they've got to find some way, somebody up front that can convert these calls for people to come in the door, so that we have a much more impactful conversation.
Then we need to not have started this with the conversation. Well, this lady kind of bothered me with her post by saying, "Oh, we waive all diagnostic fees." That might be her way to convert them calls, right? We don't know. I never got to see the post. I don't know the post. We can't.
I guarantee you, she's just giving it away.
We don't know, so let's just assume it's a bill ploy, right? That's her wording because that helps in her area, right? So what we should have done on this podcast then was to discuss different ways to lock in that call and say, well, we're not going to tell them we charge for diagnostics and we're going to roll it in a bill, because that's really what we've done.
It's an inappropriate conversation at the phone, and that's maybe what that is. It's a parallel conversation. It is completely inappropriate to have that conversation at that level on the phone, in my opinion.
What?
And I could be wrong.
What?
I could be wrong.
See?
Yeah.
And this is what I'm saying.
Hold on,
we are talking about 5 different things.
What?
I think he just threw down his shot glass.
There you go. Boom.
But that's what I'm saying.
This was a bad week for me to give up sniffing glue. I'll tell you that right now.
I am willing to go on a ledge and say, here's the problem with most of our shops in our industry. They're trying to waive, hide, disguise, distract for the customer from paying for a diagnostics. I'm saying if we're upfront, we're honest about it. That shop that can't afford that diagnostic tool, they could afford it if they'd realize they could charge for it. The problem is, you guys are saying what you're saying. 90% of shops are mishearing it as, oh, they never charge for diagnostics. Oh, they just roll it in the repair bill. And then they forget that step. They miss it. They're missing that income. Therefore, they can't afford the ATEX like me to work for them. They can't afford the equipment. They don't know what they're doing. They can't afford the proper service writer. So now we're at this conundrum of, how do you make any money if you don't charge for diagnostics? And I'm going, just charge for the frickin' diagnostics.
The problem is they can't charge for the diagnostics because the customer doesn't believe
was
that
trained
they're getting
by you to not pay for it.
Okay, that's and you're perfectly You're perfectly capable of having that opinion, and I'm okay with it. The industry, by the way, will eventually figure out that maybe it can live with two different marketing business models, whatever you want to call it, conversion models. All I know for all of my 40 years, I've worked retail, and I know people as good as anybody in industry. And all I know is if we as long as we're having a conversation that eventually leads to them visiting the place of business that I breathe life into, that I've dedicated my vocation to, once they understand that, all of this other crap is gone. It's nonsense. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean anything. It just means that we're talking the customer's language, and what we need to do at that point in time is just invite them in so that they can see that this conversation that they're having about price is not only inaccurate, irrelevant, and it's a moot point, but in the end, what we are headed in the same direction. They're paying good money for good service, and they're going to, and the way they'll recognize that is if they ever do decide to charge somebody, to go to somebody that doesn't do business the way they are. Is it my fault that I've got a 97% satisfaction index, and somebody who has a less satisfactory index, but they're tied to their principles? I mean,
You're 1 in a trillion with your ability to analyze people and sell things. And let's face it, most technical people.
I don't think that's true.
Oh,
I don't think that's true.
You don't talk to enough shop owners.
Well, I get that's the problem, though. That's the problem where Bill is taking the approach. So hold on now. Bill is taking the approach that I've got to have this skill because I've got to talk these people over the threshold. I've got to make sure that I understand them at their level, and that they walk in the door. They're not going to walk out of here with a $250 bill on average. They're going to walk out of here with a $60 bill, $600 bill on average, and I'm going to make sure that I'm profitable on every single one of those. But he just needs to make sure that he gets them over the threshold,
because the end justifies the means.
Hold on. He's supremely confident in the value that he brings to the table. And that's the problem with the shop owners that you're talking to, Matt. They're not comfortable with what they bring to the table. They don't know what to do. So they're just telling them whatever the hell they need to tell them to get them in the door, including I'm going to give away Diagnostics. Because I guarantee you that lady that put that, or the guy who put that post up on Facebook, I guarantee you that they're not running a $600 ARO. And I guarantee you they're not seeing a 60% GP on that ticket. I guarantee you they're probably running half that. And one of the reasons that they're running half that is because they don't have an hour or 2 hours of diag time on that ticket like they should.
You only can learn so much, and you can only spend so much time learning, right? So here's the problem. If we're talking to the average shop, which is probably small, I'm going to say maybe 2 techs and an owner, he doesn't have the time to spend like Bill does, spending hundreds of hours a week to learn every single little psychology thing that's in there.
No, that's BS. Then what is he doing in business? What's the point then?
Yeah. But here's the problem.
Like, go work for somebody if you don't want to be bothered to learn how to do things properly.
Oh, come on, David. Don't be absurd.
Get out of here.
What the hell's the matter with you?
That's not what I said.
That's not, absolutely not, Dutch. That is BS. If you're telling me that the guy shouldn't be bothered to take the time to learn how to run his business properly,
I never said he couldn't. I said he runs out of time, right? So he's the owner.
No.
He's also the lead tech.
You make the time that you want. Yeah. You make the time. You put your time into whatever you deem important. Because I guarantee you the Netflix is going in the background. I guarantee you that he's spending his time on Facebook. I guarantee you there's time. There's absolutely no reason for you to say that there's no time for that shop owner. One shop owner with 2 flipping techs who's probably doing $30,000 a month, but the average CEO bangs out 50 books a year. Get out of here. Tell me that guy doesn't have time. That guy's got time.
Oh, please.
And if not, you make the time.
If he has that time, David, then he should also have the resources to be capitalized well enough so that he doesn't have to give one of his most productive, or the illusion of giving one of his most productive and lucrative services away. All right. You want to make excuses. Oh, well, he absolutely has the time. Well, if he absolutely has the time, then he absolutely had that time when he was working for somebody to learn how to budget and save his money and make wise investments, right? Because he has the time, David. He's got the time to do it. Yeah, in your ear, pal of mine. That ain't the way life works. All right. You could say that's the way it works, but that's not the way it works. Here, when it comes down to is this:
didn't want to take the time. The guy didn't want to take the time. Look, I have a tech who's working at one of the fancy European shop dealerships up the street from me. He reached out to Lucas. Lucas sent him to me because he lives in this area, and he's like, "Hey, I want to open a shop." And so I started banging him. Question. How much money do you have saved up? You got to have 6 months. What is your rent going to look like? I started hitting him with 1,000 questions. Nothing deterred him. Nothing. He didn't have enough money. He doesn't have clientele. He doesn't have a proper business structure. I mean, he's got nothing. All he knows is I want to keep in my pocket all the money that the customer's paying. Because that's what he thinks.
Because he's a moron.
And I told him, and I broke it. Well, I get it. He's a moron. He doesn't know. And I broke it down to him, and I said, no. That's not how that works. Let me go ahead and break it down. The average shop owner, it's what, 5 to 7% on every ticket? You're keeping 20% of the ticket now, about 20% of the ticket now. Why on earth would you want to trade that away for 5 to 7%? That doesn't make any sense. And he's like, yeah, but this, that, and the other. It didn't matter what I told him. I gave him the empirical facts. He rejected them and decided, no, I can do this on my own. I'm going to be successful.
Yeah. And so
it's not about time. That guy.
But let's face it, right? I mean, 40 years ago, and again, I'm going to sound like a jerk, but it's okay. Bill can take it. 40 years ago, when Bill opened his shop, right, we had points condensers. Cars were kind of relatively the same. Now I got this 2020 car in here that's got 360 round view camera. It's got 16 radars in the freaking bumper and between parking sensors. It comes in and the customer asks me a question. That tech's got 2,000 pages of information to read to figure out a repair and what all is required for calibration afterwards. If it's a startup shop, one shop owner who's probably a service writer and the lead tech, he's got 2 B techs, you run out of time before you're going to start studying psychology just in keeping up with cars alone.
That guy shouldn't have bothered with that car.
So Matt, let me give you an analogy for that. So a car comes in and you've got an hour labor tied into that, right? Let's say you need to go to a level 3, level 4 diagnostics. It could be 3 hours, 4 hours of labor. However, whatever the problem is, just pick the problem in the car. Whatever the problem is, the customer can live with it. Be it for the fact that they need about $1,200 worth of front end work and maybe a couple of tires because the car is a death trap. And in case that sounds like an anomaly, what's the average age of the car? 11 and a half, 12 years and going up? What's the mileage on an average car? 120,000 miles and going up? So to me, again, the practical sense of this is I don't have to give up that hour labor. But if the customer says, well, this is what I have to work with, can you do $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 worth of work on my car and somehow work with me on this diagnostics because I just don't have respect for this? Then we're going to have a conversation about the fact that that hour is every bit worth it. But it isn't that we're waving it goodbye for zero because it wasn't worth anything. It's because we're giving them a discount of $120, $130 in diagnostic charges so that they understand that this isn't just being waved with a magic wand.
But you're 1 in a trillion shops that will sit there and have that conversation. Everybody else just wipes it off and trains the customer.
Because I'm willing to. The other 9 or 8 or 7 just say, no, we can't do that. And the customer says, well, I can't afford to do it then. Then I got to go away.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the ASOG podcast. If you'd like to support the podcast along with the work of ASOG, just go to our website, asog.site, and click on the Become a Patron Now button. Becoming a patron gets you several perks, including the podcast early, and is entirely tax deductible. That's because ASOG is a 501c3 educational charity. Once again, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast, and if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, leave us a review. It really helps us out. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel and hitting that like button. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, or if you have any topic suggestions, please reach out to me via email. My email address is, as always, david@asog.site. That's DAVID at ASOG.SITE. Until next time.